Hello again. I hope your week is starting off very well. And again, I really want to thank you so very much for working with SOAR, working with these scholars. You are very appreciated, and your time is very appreciated. Speaking of time, I would like to ask you to watch this video today and then these videos each week. I think it is a good way of me communicating with you without getting everyone together. And some things I just want to kind of explain through the Leader's Guide in the text. Also, if you will have your Leader's Guide out, so you might stop and make some notes or kind of at least gel what I'm saying with what you've already thought about with the text, I would appreciate it. So now would be a great time to pause, grab your Leader's Guide, a good cup of coffee, here's mine, right? And come back and we're taking off on week 2. Ready? And here we go for week 2. All right, so you'll probably have a scholar or two that was not with us last week. So please do take a couple of moments outside of the 45 minutes to meet with them individually, just to help them see what has been done. Hey, we have this reading challenge. We're trying to read for each week. So this week, everyone was reading through chapter 2. You didn't have a chance to do that, but if you'll pick up and do some catch up this week, chapter 5 is where we're headed for next week, and here's the place to sign the challenge. And make sure they have everything they need. Okay, they don't have to go back and necessarily do the quick write from last week, but just to know what to go ahead and read. Okay, so then as a group, you want to do a little bit of recounting what you talked about last week. So just let them share, kind of remind each other where you were, and check in how you doing maybe first thing, and then we are off with the questions. Of course, Q always means question. And so the first question, I'm going to have the scholars go ahead and turn in the book, right, in Just Mercy, to page 11, chapter 4, before I ask the question. When they're there, I'm going to say, remind them that Henry is a man that Stevenson meets on death row. Stevenson felt that the song that Henry sang was a precious gift to him. Explain how this song was a precious gift or why Stevenson felt like that. Okay, then notice we're going to stay in the same spot, so this is very intentional. Same paragraph, same page. These words insecure and inadequate. So one thing that you can do with vocabulary is to find out what the student's prior knowledge is. So I've got a tool for this, and if you've been in one of my classes, you probably know. It's called the Vocabulary Knowledge Scale. So we're going to actually use our hand, right? The scholars will use their hand, and they're going to give you a number of how well they understand each term that you talk about. So 1 is no clue. This is the first time I've ever seen it, and I have no idea at all what it means. Might as well be in a different language I don't know. 2, a little idea, but I'm pretty uncertain. 3, there's some part of the word I understand. Or something about the context. I've got a guess, but I'm not sure. 4, I can tell you what it means in context, right? I can define it here. 5, I could actually use the word myself and could explain it thoroughly. So have the students give you a hand number, 4, 5, 3, and when you see that number, then you'll be able to kind of get a sense of how well do they know the word. And if they think they know the word pretty well, don't need to spend much time there, right? If they don't, it would take a little more time. When you do look at insecure and inadequate, notice they both start with the prefix in, right, which is not. So not adequate, not secure. Also, again, I want to reiterate that when I give you vocabulary, I've been saying do not provide verbatim. That means don't just say this word means not confident. Let them decide what the word means. Use their phone if they have to look it up. Doubt they'll have to for this one. Right? So one way to get a definition is what's another word that you think could be plugged in here would mean something similar. It's a synonym. So if someone says insecure and they say not secure, that's the breakdown, but what else would mean something like secure? Well, safe, not safe. Unsafe. And that's not exactly right for this context, but you could say, instead of saying, nope, that's not it, you can say, what's everyone think? Unsafe sound right? Someone else says, no, I think it's more like not sure of yourself. Would not sure of yourself, which that sounds a lot like not confident to me, right? Does that sound like a right definition? They might have a one-word definition, again, a synonym. And so check with everybody to see. When you have something you agree on, move forward, right? So it's their definition. Good idea for for learning vocabulary is to be able to define it in context as you're going, instead of just look everything up. So there you go. So same with inadequate. Now these are going to connect to the quick right. So Stevenson did not feel up to the task of being the man on death row. The man helped Stevenson feel differently. Now this is what they're going to write. Describe a time that you have felt insecure or inadequate, right? And you can tell them, hey, we all have these moments where we don't quite feel up to a task, right? We don't quite feel like we're ready. That's normal, and if that's not, you're probably not being challenged, okay? So when have you felt that way? And then what's something that's helped you overcome these feelings, right? And then let them talk after that. Well, write first. 5, 6, 7 minutes, let them write, and then you move into this, what helps us overcome. Okay, they can share the time if they want, but we really want to get it, what helps us overcome feeling inadequate or insecure. Then we move on to another word that they need to understand, which is mass incarceration. This word's going to be really, really important for the rest of the text. So do you know what mass incarceration means? Ask. They may or may not. If they're struggling, or if they do, okay. It's first mentioned on page 14, but Stevenson really defines it on page 16, paragraph 3, so you can look at that together. And then this is paraphrased. You tell me now, what's it mean? And of course, mass, many, right? Lots of people. Incarceration in prison. Lots of people are in prison. Stevenson goes on after this to give some facts and statistics, right? Some numbers and some known things about mass incarceration, and specifically some conditions that he finds problematic. So just ask, what are the things he tells us about mass incarceration, and what does he see as problematic? Obviously, one is innocent people in prison, like will be the case with Walter Macmillan. Okay? Now we're in chapter 1. We're going to deal with an allusion, not an illusion like a magic trick, but an allusion like you allude to, where you make reference to something outside. And of course, even the chapter title tells us something about Mockingbird. Stevenson alludes to the book To Kill a Mockingbird. Why does he do this, you ask? And let them tell you. Send them back to the text to figure it out, right? I gave you some page guidance here for figuring this out. But of course, the answer is that Harper Lee wrote a fiction book, so To Kill a Mockingbird, which is totally fiction. But I'm sure she was informed by her experience, right? And Monroeville was the town she lived in. Walter Macmillan, who we're now meeting, lived in Monroeville, which leads to this idea of irony, right? What's the irony here? Well, the irony is To Kill a Mockingbird is written, back several years ago. I think it's in the 60s that comes out. This is more contemporary. And To Kill a Mockingbird is kind of, helps us feel good because it's dealing with race and justice, but it's got this good ending. And here, several years later, same city, Walter Macmillan is facing extreme injustice, apparently based on race. So really important connection there between the two. We do have some vocabulary that's going to help. This is probably an unfamiliar word to the scholars, but it is defined right here on page 24, paragraph 3. So what is miscegenation? And miscegenation is intimate relationships between people of different races, right? So what happens with Walter? Why is this important, you ask? And they should be able to tell you, hopefully, that he has an affair, right, with this white woman. And that brings the town ire up, which winds up hurting him probably, or most definitely, when they're looking for someone to pin the crime on. Unanimously is another vocabulary word. They might be familiar with un or uno, right? One. Unite. Okay. So, and then, you can play with the aus and lee, right? So this is the state of, and then it's descriptive, right? So, descriptive of being in the state of being together or one, right? So there's agreement involved. In this case, all the members of the Supreme Court agreed with a particular decision, and you can reference that on page 25. Okay, now we have an activity. So we're going to actually just really recount what we know about Walter Macmillan so far. Okay, and we're going to do a lot of recounting in today's session. So then when you move on to chapter 2, there's 2 stories to recount. So have them recount the story of Brian Stevenson coming home listening to music, right? Start there. So what happens? He's coming home, he's listening to some great music. What happens next? Oh, he stops in the street to keep listening. Then what happens, right? And so it winds up with this case of police officers who are harsh, physically harsh with him. They have an illegal search, and he's obviously completely innocent, and it's obviously based on the neighborhood he lives in and the fact that he's African American. Then have them retell the story about the man in church sometime later, right? He meets this man. So it's actually a kind of result of his experience. He kind of wants to start addressing people. He starts talking at churches and youth groups and all that. He meets this man. The man says, "You're beating the drums of justice." There's another quote from this man, and actually I'm skipping something that I think I put these in the wrong order, so skip down here. What does this quote mean? The man shows him all of these scars and things. He says, "These aren't my scars, cuts, and bruises. These are my medals of honor." What does that mean? What does he mean by that? You can bring in the word degrading here, because a lot of the ways that this man, like Stevenson up here, were treated were degrading, right? But the man turns this on his head, and it says, but it's an honor, right? Doing this for justice, this is my honor. Why did Stevenson put both of these stories in the same chapter? And that's a real thinking point. So let the scholars think through and kind of wrestle with this, okay? And you can share your ideas too, but really let them kind of pull out what he's intentional about his chapters, right? Why does he put these together? What's the connection? Okay. And then when you're finished with the week, you want to make sure that you talk about how the reading went this week, right? Did their place for reading work? They were able to concentrate, find time to read, and challenge them if they were kind of struggled with that. It was hard to read. My dog was loud, the TV was bothering me. Well, what can you do for this week? And then the challenge for this week is to read, for the following week will be to read chapters 3 through 5. So encourage them to do that. And that will be a wrap for the week. And I do thank you for your leadership, and I'm available if you have ways that I can help you. Thanks.